Witness Detective Sydney Fenwick. Good morning, Detective. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
I'm Sydney Fenwick, detective.
And are you employed?
Yes, I am a detective of the Southampton Police Department.
And how long have you worked there?
I've worked there for about 10 years.
Do you work in any specific unit?
I'm the homicide unit, done that for the past 6 years.
How many homicide cases have you handled in those past 6 years?
Oh, at least 30 cases.
Have you had any special roles on any of them?
I was lead detective on 10 of those cases.
Now, Detective Fenwick, I want to talk to you a little bit about the day of Josephine Park's death. How did you first become involved in that investigation?
The dispatcher told me to go to the amusement park and investigate.
And did you go to the scene?
Yes.
What did you see when you got there?
I saw a huge crowd standing around a body underneath a roller coaster.
And what did you do, if anything, once you got there?
I made sure the scene was secure, and then I examined the body, made sure that the ME was there, and then I interviewed some witnesses.
You interviewed some witnesses, and you mentioned a team was there. Did they do anything?
There was a forensics team there who was taking evidence from the roller coaster in the scene.
And you said you spoke with witnesses. Who did you speak to?
Jesse Burbank and the defendant Lee Holt.
Do you see Mr. Holt here today?
Yes, he's sitting over there in the green tie.
Thank you, Detective. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit. You said that you were investigating this case. How long did your investigation last?
8 months, I think.
And at the end of your investigation, did you learn anything?
I learned that Lee Holt murdered.
Objection. Your Honor, this witness is not an expert and cannot invade the province of the jury.
Your Honor, assuming we're outside the presence of the jury, should the witness be allowed to testify further, I believe she's going to say the reasons behind her investigation and why she suspected Lee Holt. She's not testifying as an expert, she's testifying as someone who's the lead investigator in this case about the evidence that's about to be presented today.
So, I'm not sure she can say that the defendant murdered the decedent. She could probably say based on the information that I gathered, it would be to look more closely at one person. I'm sure she can explain some of the information that she gathered. I'm not sure she can say, yep, no, I knew that the defendant murdered the person that
Absolutely, Your Honor.
So maybe rephrase that.
I will rephrase that. Detective, speaking specifically about things you learned about in this investigation, what did you find out, if anything?
Objection. Question calls for hearsay.
Your Honor, again, assuming we're outside the presence of the jury, if the witness should be allowed to testify, I believe she's going to speak about information she learned from speaking with the defendant. And if she's speaking about things that she learned specifically from the defendant is a party opponent in this case, and it would be allowed.
Because it's not hearsay.
Because it's not hearsay.
Based on that offer of proof, then I'll withdraw my objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. You can answer the question, Detective. Do you need me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Specifically talking about factors of things you learned about. Were you able to learn anything?
Objection. Vague.
Your Honor, I would argue that this is a very specific, and assuming we're outside the presence of the jury, that this is a very specific investigation, and I've just asked the witness what specific factors she's learned about in her overall investigation.
So the previous question was what information did you learn? And you said that you were going to get information based on conversations that she had with the defendant. That's not what this question was. Maybe ask who she spoke to. When she says she spoke to the defendant on scene, maybe ask what she learned as a result of that conversation.
I will rephrase my question. Detective, who did you speak with again?
I spoke with Jesse Burbank and the defendant Lee Holt.
And after speaking with the defendant, did you learn anything?
I learned that he had the motive because of the sexual harassment claim that Ms. Parks filed, and he made a plan to execute.
Detective, I want to break that down a little bit. You said that there was a reason that the defendant killed Miss Park. I apologize. I'm going to have to strike that. Detective, you said that there was a pending civil case. What do you know about that case?
I know that Lee Holt was accused allegedly sexually harassing Ms. Park after they broke up a romantic relationship.
And are you aware of any possible consequences for the defendant from that case?
If it was a very big media case, and he would have possibly lost his job.
Objection. The answer is calling for speculation, or the answer is speculative.
I think I tend to agree. Does this witness have, some kind of basis to know that the defendant would lose his job?
Your Honor, again, assuming we're outside the presence of the jury, I would argue that when she spoke with the defendant had a conversation with her about the case. Again, him being a party opponent, she can testify to that conversation.
Did he say I can lose my job over this?
I can't say that that's true. I believed that that was part of the conversation, but I cannot be positive.
I mean, unless she says something to the effect of, Mr. Holt told me that he could lose his job because of this, anything seems kind of speculative. Her just guessing that seems like speculation to me. If she had a conversation with the defendant that would make her think that, you can certainly examine more of that. But to just kind of make some kind of conclusion like that does seem like speculation, so I'm going to sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor, I'll move on.
Your Honor, just so that way we're not just moving on, I believe that the defendant did give a statement in which he was aware of an email.
Yes.
Yes. If my sister was well versed in the facts of this case, she would have gone straight to that point.
Sister did not believe he could testify to something that wasn't in evidence yet, but I apologize for my mistake in court conduct, Your Honor.
Okay, you can continue.
Detective, during your investigation, did you go to the scene?
Yes,
And where did you find Miss Park?
underneath the loop of the roller coaster.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Detective, do you recognize this?
Yes,
What is it?
it is a tweet from Lee Holt on June 6th at 6:48 a.m.
Your Honor, I'm moving to admit what has been premarked as Exhibit 1 into evidence. The parties have previously stipulated to its authenticity as well as its admissibility before trial today.
Is this true?
Yes.
Sadly. So admitted it's a good one.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, I want to point you to the third line of that tweet. Could you please read it?
Hopefully the staff won't fall out of their seats.
Detective, are you aware of where Miss Park was before she was on the ground below the roller coaster?
She was sitting in a roller coaster.
And are you aware of what part of the roller coaster she was on?
The first cart,
Do you know which seat she was in?
the right side.
And do you know if anyone else was with her?
Lee Holt was sitting with her.
Officer, were you able to take a look at this roller coaster?
Yes,
And were you able to examine it?
yes.
And how does the roller coaster's safety mechanisms work?
Well,
Objection. Calls for expert opinion.
Your Honor, assuming we're outside the presence of the jury, if the witness is allowed to testify, I believe she's just going to say what she observed in the roller coaster, that she saw that there was a harness and a safety bar. I don't believe you have to be an expert to testify to the fact that there's a basic seatbelt and a bar that goes across the lap.
You said, how does the safety mechanism work? that kind of implies it's going to be some kind of technical conversation. Maybe we can rephrase it as to, did you observe anything to hold it inside, or something sort of generic like that.
All right, I can rephrase. Detective, were there any safety mechanisms?
Yes.
What were they?
There was a harness and a safety bar.
Did you check to see if they were working?
Yes.
Were you able to confirm with anyone that they were working?
Yes, I spoke with Alex, the chief mechanic.
Detective, why was Ms. Park on the roller coaster that day?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Your Honor, assuming we're outside the presence of the jury, should the witness be allowed to testify? I believe she's just going to say that Ms. Park was on the roller coaster because of a scavenger hunt that the defendant created. Again, I believe she's going to testify that this came from her conversation with the defendant.
Overruled. What do you like?
She was on the roller coaster because of a scavenger hunt that the defendant Lee Holt made.
Detective, you said earlier that there was a forensic team on scene. Were they able to collect evidence from the roller coaster?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Counsel, what are we looking at?
I apologize. Looking at what's been pre-marked as Exhibit 2, the forensic fingerprint evidence.
For which item?
Lee Holt for the safety belt. Detective, do you recognize this?
Yes.
What is it?
It is the fingerprint analysis.
Your Honor, I believe we've already stipulated to the admissibility of this, so we don't really need to get into the foundation of the problem.
Your Honor, I was just laying the foundation for whether or not the witness herself had ever come into contact with this, as she just testified that the forensic team was the one who collected it.
Entirely irrelevant, we've already stipulated to it.
I will let you try the case in what you see as the most effective manner.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, you can answer the question again. What is it?
It's the forensic report of the fingerprint analysis on the safety harness buckle of Ms. Parks.
Your Honor, I'm now moving to admit what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 2 into evidence. It has been previously stipulated to as both authentic and admissible prior to trial today.
No objection.
So good.
Detective, I believe you just said this, but just for clarification, what was this fingerprint found on?
Objection, asked and answered.
Yeah, did she just say it?
I mean, she just generally said that it was, again, assuming we're outside the presence of the jury, I believe what she said was this is just a general fingerprint analysis of the harness. Didn't specifically say whether or not the fingerprint was found on the harness.
Okay, you can have it. Overruled.
You can continue.
It's a fingerprint analysis of the Mrs. Parks safety harness.
And how many sets of fingerprints were found on it?
2.
Who do they belong to?
The first one was Miss Parks, of course, because it was her safety harness.
And who's did the second belong to?
The second belonged to Lee Holt, the defendant.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness.
Sure.
Approach me with Exhibit 3, the safety bar.
That's the safety bar one? Okay.
Detective, do you recognize what I just gave you?
Yes,
What is it?
it is.
Your Honor, again, we've already stipulated to the admissibility of this.
I'm going to let her try the case the way she wants to.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It is the second fingerprint analysis report of the fingerprints found on Mrs. Park's safety harness. then it's the forensic report for the safety bar. My mistake.
Your Honor, I'm now moving to admit what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 3. It's been previously stipulated to as authentic and admissible by
No objection.
Admitted.
Detective, whose fingerprints were found on the safety lever?
The defendant Lee Holtz.
Detective, was there an autopsy performed in this case?
Yes.
And what was the cause of death?
Severe blunt trauma to Mrs. Park's head. From
No
fall.
further questions. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The chief mechanic at Rosewater West.
Yes.
And you started working there in 1999
Yes.
when the defendant brought you over from Russia?
Yes.
And he helped you settle in America,
Yes.
gave you a job,
Yes.
and the defendant specifically welcomed you.
Yes. He welcomed all of us.
He shook your hand,
Yes.
unlike the owner of your last park
Yes.
in Russia.
Yes.
You'd be reprimanded if you spoke with them.
Yes.
And you became chief mechanic after only 2 years with the company.
Yes.
And in the 15 years of being chief mechanic, no one ever got hurt before Miss Park.
Correct.
And you told the detective right after this happened that you had just replaced all the safety bars.
Yes.
And you spoke with the defendant before today, correct?
I don't recall.
You don't remember speaking with the defendant?
No.
You don't remember that he reassured you that no matter what you told the police, you'd have a job.
He did say that to me. Yes.
And that meant you could stay in this country,
Yes.
feed your family.
Objection. Xenophobic. Sounds like a very Trumpian argument. Just gonna deport people.
Your Honor, I'm using the exact words that the defendant used in her deposition before trial today. If it's
Which is
xenophobic, then the defendant, then the witness is also xenophobic of herself.
Which is the statement that was entered into evidence today?
It was not a statement that was entered into evidence today. I was asking the defendant if these were things in her state of mind, and she answered yes. Now,
This isn't the defendant.
defendant?
pardon the witness.
Wait, so back up. You said you were asking this witness of things that the defendant said. that
Sorry,
were-
no, from the witness's own statement.
Is that in evidence?
No, it's not, but I was asking her about those thoughts. I wasn't.
Okay, you can inquire.
So, again, the defendant reassured you that you'd be able to keep your job,
He said I wouldn't lose my job no matter what I said to the police.
and you'd be able to feed your family
Well, yes.
and stay in this country
Yes.
with Holt Enterprises.
Yes.
No further questions.
Your Honor, may I redirect?